It was supposed to be the start of the great summer getaway this weekend, wasn't it? But not for many holidaymakers. Their excitement turned to frustration, even anger, as we saw those scenes of gridlock at the ports of Dover and Folkestone, leading to long delays, missed ferries and tunnel crossings. All been a bit of a nightmare. Yeah,
the government says it's working with the French authorities to ensure more staff are deployed to reduce congestion. Well, let's get a sense of how things are looking right now. Our reporter Noor Nanji is in Folkestone for us. Morning, Noor. Well, I can see the traffic building, but give us some context. How bad is that?
Well, it's a much better picture compared to what we were seeing over the weekends. As you can see behind me, there are still some queues going into the Channel Tunnel entrance, but it's not quite gridlocked in the way that it was over the past 3 days. So what caused those issues in the first place? Well, it's after parts of the M20 motorway were closed, and that led to essentially it becoming something of a lorry park. And because of that, cars were being diverted onto smaller roads, and that caused those tailbacks that we're seeing, which were going on for miles. And there was a real sense of frustration here over the weekend, exhausted passengers and children and families, even reports of people sleeping in their cars. Now, as I say, the situation did start to improve from last night, and as you said there, the National Highways Agency has confirmed that the M20 is now fully open coastbound and that traffic is now free flowing.
Noor, thanks very much indeed. That's Noor Nanji live in Folkestone for us this morning. Well, let's go straight now to the Director of Public Affairs for Eurotunnel, John Keefe. Morning to you, Mr. Keefe. Obviously, the scenes that we saw over the weekend were not acceptable for the people who are stuck in their cars, some of them for 20, 21 hours at a time. What can you do, even though we've seen this morning things are easing a little, what can you do to prevent this happening again for people who are concerned and are travelling in the next week?
Well, let's be clear about what's happening this morning. That's not easing, that's normal service. Traffic is moving through the Channel Tunnel very smoothly, as it did all weekend. Our services ran on time. We had 4 departures per hour. We filled every one of them. And we carried more traffic than was forecast to turn up over the weekend. So the situation has been much more congestion on the roads than a problem with the service at the Channel Tunnel. As I say, we are in a very, very busy period here. I think what happened over the weekend, starting really from Friday, when there was the declaration of the critical incident at Dover, and then there was a serious accident that closed the M20, we ended up with 2 things happening at the same time. We had the expected very heavy traffic for passengers getting away on their holidays, and then we had an unexpected amount of truck traffic that was left over from the week that you would normally expect to have travelled to France, leaving the roads clear for passengers. And so those 2 sets of traffic trying to use the roads at the same time caused a huge amount of congestion. But once they actually got to the terminal, then they got through, and we carried everybody who had booked, who turned up during yesterday and during Saturday as well. Within the time that we set for their service. So we say to them, turn up 2 hours before your departure, and we were carrying them at around 90 minutes. So we have to be very clear in separating the 2 different elements here. The cross-channel services worked, and we had huge congestion on the roads.
OK, I appreciate what you're saying there. It's a really complicated picture, but I'm going to ask you a really simple question. Forgive the simplicity of this, though. What can be done to help?
Lots. There are a number of different factors here. The borders is something that we've heard talked about a lot over the weekend. And there is now a requirement to go through a border process which takes longer than it did in the past. That could be digitized. It could be moved online. A lot of modern technology exists that would reduce the reliance on staff to conduct those processes in situ. So there's a lot of work that can be done around improving the border. And then there's the reality of the situation where 2 of the UK's biggest ports are served by one motorway. So if anything goes wrong on that motorway or in one of those environments, then it creates knock-on effects. So we need to have more resilience in the motorway network, in the road network, leading from the whole of the country through this gateway to Europe. And it's not just the passengers, because we see the passengers at peak times of the summer and the other school holidays. But every day throughout the week, throughout the whole of the year, it's the trade route. It's our main trade route with Europe. 265 billion pounds worth of goods cross through the short straits every year. And delaying that is bad for the economy. So we need to have additional resilience in the road network. And then the third part is we've got a railway network that leads through the Channel Tunnel, but that doesn't operate efficiently. So we need to improve the railway network for both high-speed passenger trains and more particularly for railway freight trains. We can take a lot of this traffic off the roads. We can put it onto railway freight trains. It saves in the number of drivers that are needed, and there's a shortage of drivers at the moment. It's a reduction in fuel costs for the transport of the freight because the railways can be electric. It's a reduction in pollution, better for the environment, both through the movement of goods up and down motorways, and more particularly for local communities, the congestion and the noise and the air pollution that happens when there are so many trucks parked. And then, of course, that clears the roads for the local communities. So there are definitely solutions. These solutions are not new. They've been on the table for many, many years. But hopefully something like this will actually focus attention on them.
John Keefe, thanks very much indeed. And just a comment from the Department for Transport, who've told us this morning, while congestion in Kent is beginning to ease, we recommend that passengers check the latest advice from their operators before travelling.